In this talk, we're going to learn about the life cycle of different helminths. In this talk, we learn about the different types of helminths and the life cycle of different helminths, including a nematode, a cestode, and a trematode. Helminths are multicellular parasitic worms that can have long, elongated, cylindrical, or flat bodies. They come in a variety of lengths from about 1 millimeter to 10 meters. They're known to cause infections that can affect billions of people around the world. And it has been shown that about 1/6 of the human population suffers from ascariasis, which is caused by the Helminth Ascaris. It's also known that more than 1 billion people affect from whipworm. Hookworm, on the other hand, infects over 500 million people. And thus, helminths are known to cause a lot of misery in humans. There are different types of parasitic helminths, and they can be classified into 3 main groups: the nematodes, or the roundworms, the cestodes, that are also called as the tapeworms, and the trematodes, that are also called as flukes. Helminths that are known to cause infections can complete their life cycle in either one host or in multiple hosts, depending on the type of helminth. Some helminths, like Ascaris, will utilize a single host to complete their life cycle, while other helminths, like Taenia, use multiple hosts to complete their life cycle. In the case of Taenia, it utilizes humans and herbivores like cattle or pigs to complete its life cycle. The asexual development of Taenia occurs in the herbivores, and hence they are the intermediate hosts, while sexual reproduction occurs in humans, making the human the definitive host. Ascaris is a well-studied nematode that is known to cause the disease ascariasis. It completes its life cycle in one host, and the infection process begins by the ingestion of embryonic Ascaris eggs, which are basically eggs that have undergone a certain stage of development. After ingestion of these embryonated eggs, the eggs go to the intestines, and there they hatch and the larvae emerge. These larvae are able to pass through the intestinal walls and enter circulation. Once they enter circulation, they migrate to the lungs, where they undergo further development. Once they have undergone a certain stage of development, they will penetrate through the alveolar walls and start ascending upwards through the trachea, and then they are finally coughed up in the mouth and swallowed. Thereby, they re-enter the gastrointestinal tract. From the gastrointestinal tract, they move to the small intestines, and in the small intestines, they undergo and complete maturation to form the adult worms. These adult worms are now capable of undergoing sexual reproduction, and hence they can form fertilized eggs. A female is known to lay a large number of eggs, anywhere from like 20 to 20,000 eggs per day. And these eggs are then shed out of the host's body through their stool or feces. The eggs that have been fertilized can start the process of embryogenesis and thereby undergo certain stages of development before they are ingested by an unsuspecting host. And thus the cycle continues. Hence, in this example, Ascaris is using only one host to complete its life cycle. Taenia is a well-known cestode that is known to cause the disease Taeniasis. It is able to complete its life cycle in 2 hosts, one of which is a human. Humans are infected by larvae of Taenia when they ingest raw or undercooked meat that contain these larvae. Upon ingestion of the larvae, they're able to go to the intestine of the human, where they are able to attach to the intestinal walls and complete their developmental processes. Upon attaining sexual maturity, the proglottids in the Taenia are able to produce fertilized eggs. Once the proglottids mature and gravid proglottids are formed, they are shed into the feces and thus expelled from the body. The gravid proglottids can have up to 10,000 eggs, and in a Taenia worm, they can have anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 proglottids. Once the proglottids are shed and the fertilized eggs are dispersed, these eggs can then be ingested by herbivores like cattle or pigs. These cattle or pigs, upon ingestion of the fertilized eggs that have begun the process of development, provide a good environment for the larvae to continue development and hatch in their gastrointestinal tracts. Upon hatching, the larvae that are formed are able to penetrate through the intestinal walls and are able to go to the muscle tissues of these animals. In the muscle tissue, these larvae are able to undergo further development. Once this infected muscle tissue is ingested by a human, the human gets infected with Taenia, and thus the cycle continues. Thus, in this case, Taenia utilizes two hosts, a human, which functions as the definitive host, and cattle or pigs that function as the intermediate host. Schistosomes are helminths that belong to the group of trematodes, and they cause the disease schistosomiasis. They utilize two hosts to complete their life cycle, and one of these hosts is a human. Humans are infected with schistosomes when they come in contact with water containing the larval forms of schistosomes. These larvae are able to enter the human through skin. Once they are in the human, they can continue to undergo development and enter circulation, where they eventually end up into the liver. Once they are in the liver, they can undergo maturation to form adult schistosomes. These adult schistosomes that are formed can then migrate either to bladder or to intestinal tissues, depending on the type of schistosome. Once they are present in these tissues, they can undergo sexual reproduction. During sexual reproduction, the eggs that are formed will then be expelled out of the body either through feces or through urine. The eggs then undergo development, and after attaining a certain stage, they're able to hatch and release the larvae in water. These larvae then are able to penetrate into the tissue of snails, where they undergo further development. These include the formation of sporocysts and ultimately another larval form that has the ability to be released from the snails into the water. These larval forms will then be able to penetrate the skin of humans and cause schistosomiasis. Thus, in this case, the human acts as the definitive host where sexual reproduction occurs, whereas the snail functions as an intermediate host where asexual development occurs. With this, we come to the end of our talk, where we learned about different types of helminths and the life cycles of nematodes, cestodes, and trematodes.